Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Future Space. I'm your host, Daniel Fox. Our guest today is Lane Bess. Lane is the principal and founder of Bess Ventures and Advisory, a family office fund supporting technology firms that innovate and disrupt across multiple market sectors. He has led and built some of the world's largest cybersecurity companies, including Palo Alto Networks and Zscaler, both of which helped lead to IPO. Lane also serves as a trustee at Carnegie Mellon University and supports philanthropic interests across health and social issues. On December 11th, 2021, Bess flew to space aboard Blue Origin New Shepard, and then again on February 25th, 2025. Lane, welcome to the Future Space and welcome back to Earth.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Lane, what would be 3 words that capture the essence of space?
Peaceful, thought-provoking, hyphenated word, and exhilarating.
Peaceful.
When you look out of the capsule and you see the beauty of Earth, even beneath some of the clouds you might see, you realize the Earth as a whole is beautiful. When you zoom in and you're standing on the ground and dealing with the day-to-day challenges or influenced by the politics and some of the human activities that take place that aren't so favorable on the planet, you don't have that feeling of peace. And so for me, going up the second time was really focused on spending more time looking out and seeing the view. And in my mind's eye, oftentimes when I'm relaxing, or maybe even going to sleep, I will get that picture in my mind. And the day's challenges, and even the things we hear on the news every day, seem a little bit more irrelevant.
I mean, in general, do you think that's what perspective brings to pretty much everything? When you look up, when you fly on the plane, you look down, things are much different. If you step out from your house and you look back, the house seems to be quiet, taking aside the fact that, you have all these people living inside. But going to these new frontiers, going to these new places, climbing a mountain and looking back, these are these opportunities that can offer perspective and makes you realize that everyday problems can just be dismissed and there are things that are bigger than us.
Absolutely. It's really akin to so many of us that stare off into space and wonder what the origin of this planet, of the universe is. Putting religion aside, there's just a wonderment and a mystery that everybody experiences. A departure. I spent time this winter with you on the Antarctica expedition as well. This is a departure from the things that we oftentimes find as the challenges and the things that create pressure in our life. So I think when you go on any adventure, it is a departure. And I think you use the word a perspective, a different perspective on things. It's not to find ourselves escaping the realities of our world and what we must experience and process, but it creates in my mind a peace of mind, a knowledge that there is something bigger, and we're a part of that as well.
How different was the second experience? The first one, it's such a physical experience, right? Going up with the adrenaline, the rush. I mean, I remember the first time I jumped out of a plane, I lost my breath for a few seconds and I got it back. The parachute was open and then the adrenaline is rushing. And by the time you land, you've all the training pre-jumping kind of went out the window. Thank God that the parachute opened, by itself. But then you keep doing it and then you start to appreciate really the experience, and then your body doesn't see that as so much as a almost kind of fight or flight. So the second time you went up in the rocket, how different was it for your body and for your mind?
You described that almost perfectly and to my own experience. And I'd say, first of all, there are people who don't fear these kind of adventures, whether it's jumping out of a plane with a parachute or going up on a rocket. That's fundamental to the activity itself, right? And if you are one of those people, maybe you love very intense amusement park rides, you're a candidate for these experiences. But when you do experience it the very first time, as you described, it is such a rush to the senses that you almost can't fully process it, right? I mean, the fall from a plane in a parachute, maybe that's a 10-minute experience from the time you leave the plane till you hit the ground with the parachute. Blue Origin adventure was, all in all, about 14 minutes from ignition to full recovery on Earth. And so for me, the first time was such a rush. While I had the video and the pictures that I could relive that, and I do oftentimes, the experience to the body was something that was so quick that I wanted and needed to do it again. So the second trip to me was great because I knew exactly what I was going to experience along every phase of the mission. And I was able to decide which pieces of it I wanted to focus most of my attention on. And for me, it was the view. In fact, amongst the 6 of us that went up in Mission 30, I was obviously the only one who was going on a repeat trip. And so many of the questions they had to me are, what will I experience? What will it be like? I answered those questions, of course, but I focused more on what I would do if I were you on your first trip. And I focused each one of them on the view. In fact, so much so that 2 of the other astronauts spent probably the majority of their time in their seat enjoying the view. And even the others that partook in some of the weightlessness as well spent a large portion and ultimately thanked me, because that view is the connection of so many of the things I've already shared with you on this call, that feeling, that presence of who we are and what this planet is.
That is the thing that is unique about the experience. The loss of gravity can be experienced on Earth in a zero gravity flight or in different ways, but the view itself, and because it is such a physical experience, your body takes over and your mind takes a back seat on your first flight. And this is one of the reasons why doing these things several times, you get to appreciate them even more. I mean, I wrote this piece about going to Antarctica for the same reasons. It's the first time you go down, you're so impressed by the scale of everything, and it's such a foreign land. But then once you keep going back, you start to see things differently. It's like going to Times Square for 5 minutes. It's so overwhelming and everything kind of blurs into everything. But if you go back every day for a week, by the end, you start to notice the little details, the subtle. And for me, these discovery are even more profound than the big sensation at the beginning.
Adding to that, the experiences, whether it's going to space or as you shared the Antarctica experience, you really understand your place on Earth, your place in the universe, your place in evolution. You really begin to ponder how humans have come so far, and in particular in the last 100 years, if not in the last couple of decades. While we did land on the moon in the late 1960s, the real full velocity of the learning and acceleration of space has been really within the last 20 years, and one would argue maybe even within the last 10. And so everything is accelerating at such a pace that I can only imagine. I wish I could live another 100 years and experience some of the space exploration that others after us will have the opportunity, and maybe the affordability more so, to experience. The thing that I have a lot of pride in is on the first flight, I took my son, and will forever be known as the first parent and child to travel to space together. When we think about the Star Trek adventures and the families that live and habitat in space, we'll always be the first of 2 family members to go together. So there's a lot of aspects of this that just you reflect upon humankind as a whole, evolution as a whole.
Well, so that's a great segue for the second question. There was this technology story of space, there was a science story of space, but what would be the human story of space for you?
For me, it's really the progress that technology has made. You know, our existence as a planet the existence of all planets and solar systems and galaxies. These are the result of something we still probably can't comprehend. But for me, the curiosity that man has and the motivation to press the limits and go beyond our planet, this is something very unique. I don't want to say it's singular within the universe, but it's very unique amongst the human brain, the species. And so to me, the willingness and the drive for humankind to address its curiosity and do it in an intellectual way that transcends simple evolution, right? Again, I'll reference our time in the Antarctica. You look at tremendous advancements in terms of the way animals, mammals adapt to their environment. This is something which is an evolution, but what you do when you travel to space and you solve a curiosity that only man has the intellectual ability or capacity to address. That's exciting to me, and to me, that's what I ponder when I think about that, the adventure to space.
We know that life can exist on the planet for hundreds and hundreds of millions of years without getting anywhere further than existing, right? The dinosaurs were around for hundreds of years, and had it not been for the randomness of the universe resetting the field, most likely the dinosaurs would still exist today. That event allowed the rise of the mammals and us, and within a short time now we're about to be the ones taking life beyond the planet. And if nature has a drive to connect on the planet, then that drive is the same in the universe. And now we're that medium, that agent that is making this possible. So not only we have a duty now to keep going. Did you always look at space in that way, or this is something new?
I have, but the other thing that I viewed when I thought about and I think about space is the fragile nature of our planet. And again, I'm not the person who can advocate necessarily for environmental safety and things like this. But when I think about it, particularly when in 2.5 minutes, we were beyond the gravity of Earth and in space, you recognize that there is an equilibrium in everything from the way our planets orbit the sun, the impact that moons and other planets have around our gravitational pull. And you just recognize that there is an evolution to humans, but there is a fragile nature of the planet. And we can talk about conservation efforts and things like this. That's not the purpose of today's conversation. But when you see the Earth from 80 miles up, or even from further, which some of the astronauts that have gone to the ISS and to the moon itself see the Earth, you realize that there's an equilibrium and a balance that in many ways mirrors the fragile environments that so many living things on Earth are subject to. And I'm not a doomsday person, but you think about the time this planet has existed, and as you pointed to, the time that humans and other living things have occupied this planet, it's just such a small amount of time in the broader sense of the universe. And it makes you realize that it's likely that this planet will someday come to an end. Certainly not something we need to worry about, but it does bring to light the fragility of the planet and get that feeling when you look at the Earth from above.
You were saying earlier about how there's a future ahead that is so exciting, or the possibility of it now is very exciting. I never thought the space and thought about this is where we're going. I never really connected the dots until I saw the 2 SpaceX rockets landing upright. That was for me my Apollo moment. Before that, I was always humbled and mesmerized by the stars, but not looking at it and thinking, great, this is where we're going. And my opinion, to be honest, was 100 years on this planet is plenty. If you pass it, throw yourself a big party. But now, if someone offered me to live 500 years, even if those 400 would be be homeless, I would take it without any hesitation, because it's like we're opening a door now, a new door, in where the idea of the future forward is going to be dramatically different than what we understand of life today. Are you excited about all these new technologies?
Absolutely. I am a technology person myself. In fact, I'm speaking to you from one of the companies that's in the semiconductor AI space that I'm involved with. And just the thought of where we're going, we go through a series of evolutions, or I even could call them revolutions. We saw this in the Industrial Revolution, which lasted a good part of the 20th century. We came to the Internet Revolution, which has advanced us in so many ways. In fact, one would argue that the advancements in technology in the Internet and other spaces have been the things that have afforded us to go to space. Let's be clear. Jeff Bezos, by leveraging the internet to create the most amazing retail platform in the world, created the wealth to fulfill his passion to build a company like Blue Origin. So one would argue that technology advancements like the internet fueled PayPal. Elon Musk, where he began, as an entrepreneur, was an online platform for transaction processing. So this technology revolution led to the ability for people like Jeff and Elon to fund these space exploration companies. The other way we would have done it would have been the normal way we fund NASA and other types of things. So technology itself is exciting, and I think will continue to push things forward and help us push the boundaries of how far we can explore on Earth and in space.
And we take technology for granted. I think that when people look back into the past and they look at it with this structure around them, that they don't recognize how it came together. But you can't just take these things out of the equation. It's a package. It's two sides of the same coin. And moving forward with AI and with the technology, I mean, every day you're hearing about these groundbreaking discoveries. I mean, you're right in the middle of it now. You were in cybersecurity and now you're in AI. What do you see some of the biggest developments now with AI?
Well, certainly the ability for us to process information and data and learn and react quicker. So I think there's going to be an acceleration of learning, intelligence, and creating. And that's regardless of whether AI is being used in the form of just software solutions, things that allow us to search information quicker, or in technologies such as semiconductor areas. This will proliferate, and I have said it to many people, and it's why I'm so excited to still be active in tech, and that is that this is the next revolution. There was the internet revolution, which goes back into the late 90s, 25 years plus or minus ago. Now we're facing another revolution, which will be the AI revolution. And I think this will advance everything. But I want to point to something that I think is critically important. There was a time in evolution or in man's existence when they didn't have the intelligence to create, let alone destroy. Now we're actually at a point where we've been able to use technology to advance our interests and create. But that technology in this century, in the last century, has the potential to destroy as well. And when we talk about this, we can talk about it in simple scientific ways. Nuclear risks, the way we use technology in warfare, drones, AI, driving drones. When we look at, in my industry that I've been very active in, cybersecurity, this AI, there's a form of AI which is a dark AI, which allows bad actors to use this technology to bring down companies, banking systems, attack governments. So at the same time that technology, mankind's curiosity, adventure, AI has and will continue to advance the potential of what we can do, it also has the potential to be the demise of mankind and perhaps even of the planet. There was a quote which I made in an interview following my last trip on Blue Origin, where I said the only limitation to humanity's creativity and progress is humanity's ability to get along. And, that in and of itself perhaps is my biggest fear on earth, humanity's ability to get along. When you think about progress, when people come together and technology and people come together and they're all aligned and in the same direction, kindred spirits, amazing things happen. But when those things are juxtaposed or competing or combating, this is a great unknown. So to some degree, there's evolution, there's technology, revolution, and then there's humankind's use of all of these things.
Do you think that the fundamentals of that have always existed? If we look back at the past, our society has been through these profound transformation and facing different technology. You read about the arrival of the printing press and how disruptive it was, and the church actually made it illegal for everyone to have a printing press because information was controlled by other people. Is AI really just a really powerful technology that is disrupting everything, while at the same time there's a lot of opportunities for damage? There are millions of people that wake up in the morning trying to figure how to make this work for the benefit of everyone.
I think people's general interest is to do for good and create for good. And so if you were to tell me on the balance or ask me on the balance where I think AI and other advancements will take us, I think it leans toward the good. I think the outcomes and the potential of things we can do are for the good. I think the thing that is juxtaposed to the good is the thirst for power, right? I'll go to those specific examples you gave, and I've pondered these myself many times. At the end of the day, the creation of the printing press and communication and media was about power. If I can control what people are consuming information-wise, we see this in some of the governments. And again, we won't pop politics here today, but when you take a look at governments, dictatorships, and how they control information and create a belief system amongst their people who live in their countries, this is about power and control. So when you think about AI and to the degree to which AI will be used for power and control, these are the things that create risk for stability on the planet, and also the negative perception of AI being a bad thing. Fundamentally, it's not a bad thing. It follows the path of human interest to create for the good. And we just need to see more of that.
So you were in cybersecurity, you're in AI. Are you looking, and you've been to space, are you looking at space as a component of your business model, with using the moon maybe as a place for a server or the network structure? How is space being incorporated into your vision of technology?
I don't know that I have as high aspirations as settling Mars as Elon Musk does. Of course, aspirations drive a lot of activity and advancements in technology, so I don't have any negative view of that. Certainly, if it happens, it'll happen well after I'm gone. But when I think about space and how it impacts technology, and people have asked, when does space really become something that humans are getting benefit from? We see this in I'll use Starlink as an example. Starlink is the best example of where space is serving a real purpose in advancing technology. Communications from remote parts of the world, the ability to use space and satellites to communicate. This is going to change the fundamental communications capability. In fact, I imagine that typical networks that we have on Earth that are wired, even wireless, are probably going to be surpassed by the potential of satellite communication, both video, audio, using satellites. This is probably the first real utilization of space technologies. But going beyond that, being able to go to the moon, find rare earth metals and other types of elements and things that can better serve man. I don't imagine necessarily us becoming a major mining company on the moon, although I do believe there will be benefits to going to these planets and learning and advancing our overall knowledge of the universe and our life on this earth.
During the age of exploration, when countries started to navigate the oceans and there was new territories to conquer, out of this, East India Company became the biggest corporation in the world, covering the entire earth until it was dismantled. Now, looking at space, we see that Starlink has become, by default, a dominant product out there. Is Starlink and SpaceX the next India company just because of the nature of they've taken ownership of the domain, and it's going to be really hard even for Blue Origin with its own strategy of doing it for anyone else to get in?
I had this very discussion at dinner last night with some investors that we were discussing investing in space technologies. And by the way, I'm an investor in SpaceX, and I did that primarily because I believed, put aside some of the rocket and delivery mechanisms that SpaceX has, it was the Starlink piece of the equation. Coming from a telecommunication internet background, I saw the potential of that. This will be a $1 trillion company. This ultimately will surpass the value of Tesla. And, you frame it pretty interestingly. I do believe that others will compete in this space, and I do believe that Jeff Bezos has aspirations, the capacity to do so as well. It's quite interesting. We talk about, when you go certain many miles off of the coast, I do a lot of boating myself. You're in international waters where there is really no law by any one government. You just hope that you don't have pirates making their own rules there. What's being done in space right now is kind of akin to that. Those are international waters. I mean, for all we know, Elon Musk and others can deploy millions of satellites. And I don't want to use a term too negatively, but littering space with satellites for the benefit of commercial services, such as Starlink and other things. And I don't imagine in the same way that countries like China can take open waters and create islands and say, this is an extension of our country. This is international waters, that anybody can restrict the use of space for commercial purposes. So I do believe that this is an aspiration that Elon Musk has. And again, I don't say that with negativity. I think he, like Andrew Carnegie, going to Carnegie Mellon University myself, I have a lot of appreciation for his impact on the Industrial Revolution. This is what Elon is doing with technology now. I think it's necessary. It's just the necessary pressing forward of humankind. While I do get concerned that space becomes a litter zone for so many things flying and falling to Earth on occasion, once again, I think the progress of mankind that it drives is critical and is important. My hope is that it just doesn't cause the demise of mankind through unintended consequences.
You mentioned China. I think that right now we live in a political world where one direction is not necessarily appreciated by everyone. China, Russia are becoming a bigger part of the equation. How different do you think that conversation is going on in China with their own objectives? The moon and the space, the low orbit and the higher orbit. They have their own space station. They're developing their own GPS so that they don't have to rely on America. So what are your thoughts on their role in the equation?
In some ways, I think that space helps define a superpower's ability to claim itself as a superpower. It seems kind of an odd checkbox. But if you take a look at it, whether it was the US-Russia space race from many decades ago, in many ways, the superpowers and the politics and the claim to having space as part of your overall objective, I think will continue. And so from a standpoint of pressing forward with regard to space exploration, space technology development, I think this is actually a positive thing. I wish that there was more of a unified effort. The ISS, this was, even amongst all the politics that exists on the planet today, the ISS still was something where countries came together. In the same way the Olympics, countries would come together to both compete and experience something, without political interests involved there. I believe space has that potential, because if there is going to be a existential threat to the planet, that's probably the time at which all politics, all individual objectives driven by either good or bad intentions will be put aside. And so I think encouraging international space activities together is important. And for that to happen, it will take the financial support and initiative of the superpowers, but it will also take the innovation of people such as Bezos and Elon Musk that can press the limits of innovation. When I take a look at how much space initiatives have advanced because of the efforts of both SpaceX and Blue Origin, this couldn't have happened decades ago, and it's a good thing. And so I'm highly optimistic that we'll continue to see private initiatives in space and space exploration come together with governmental and hopefully positive political support to advance all activity.
You're in cybersecurity and telecommunication, and now that domain is getting bigger and more complicated. We just recently saw Musk dealing with being hacked on a very large scale. Are you surprised of how the system can work itself despite how fragile it is? I mean, you were talking earlier about the fragility of the planet, but at the same time, can you make a parallel with the fragility of the world that we live in and how vulnerable it can become super easily?
Yeah, I'll try to make this a somewhat short story, but some people don't know that I was the product manager that launched AT&T's internet business back in the early 90s. It's when I first got exposed to Jeff Bezos and Amazon when they were first starting the company. At the time, AT&T had asked the team of people that were working around me and I was working for to stop the internet because it was going to change the way the business was going to operate. And ultimately, you couldn't stop it. It was going to take on its own form. At the time the internet was launched, nobody necessarily thought about the risks, the security risks, the risks to the financial institutions through cyber attacks. And, from my standpoint, with technology, there are always some vulnerabilities. And in the case of cyber, this is something that is going to be a constant challenge. I actually believe that, and of course, I'm not the only one to believe this, that the biggest frontier for battle and war is going to be cyber in the future. At the end of the day, the ability to debilitate government organizations, financial infrastructure and systems, just general communications, will be affected by cyber threats. And we can talk about physical systems of launching, whether it's nuclear attacks or other types of warfare. Ultimately, these are connected through technology. And this technology is rarely what we call air-gapped, fully air-gapped, where it is disconnected from the internet or disconnected from the cloud. It will become more and more difficult to keep these air-gapped environments in such a way that they can't be susceptible to cyber attack. For me personally, it's why continuing in cybersecurity is quite interesting, because it's going to touch, and it does touch, all things when it comes to technology from a risk factor.
Which leads to Google that just acquired Wiz for $32 billion, their biggest acquisition ever, and a former employee of yours.
Yes. Well, Asaf, the founder, brilliant technologist, it's not his first company. And Dali Rajic, the president of that company, who worked at one of my previous companies, Zscaler. This is a statement about how critical internet infrastructure is going to be. Google, for example, has got to be able to compete with Amazon, with Microsoft Azure. And quite frankly, this is a very strategic move by Google. They were beginning to become a distant third with regard to technology for enterprises and governments, particularly cloud transformation. And at the core of that, they had to get themselves a platform that would allow them to compete within the enterprise and government space. With very strategic acquisition. Companies like Google don't make that kind of a monetary expense investment unless it's very strategic. I consider Wiz to be as much a cyber move as it is an enterprise infrastructure management acquisition by Google. So I think it's supportive of what I said before with regard to technology, infrastructure, cyber continuing to be a necessity as mankind moves forward. And as you can appreciate, the systems that manage and control so much of the space technology, space exploration, are impacted by networks and the internet. So in some ways, it all comes together.
Closing on our conversation, Lane, for someone who has built several companies, successful, been to space, your connections in all these emerging fields, what would be Lane's 3 words of wisdom?
I would say positivity, creativity, and willingness to, this is more than one word, but risk aversion, willingness to adventure and explore without concern of any consequence.
Well, you've definitely put those words in action. So anything in particular that you're working on right now that you want to share in terms of new projects, new endeavors?
Well, I'd probably point to the 2 companies that I'm involved with. My current company, Deep Instinct, leverages very sophisticated AI. People have asked the question as to why I'm still involved in cyber after some great successes. People say you should be off enjoying more space trips and other adventures. But the reality is, I've been 25 years in cyber, and my biggest belief is that the advancement of cyber threats with AI is going to be quite risky. And unless you're using technologies like deep neural networks, which is what Deep Instinct focuses on doing, it will be very difficult to fight fire against the fire of bad AI. So I continue to put energy towards advancing cyber prevention to make sure that we could keep on balance the goodness of AI and not let the bad creep in. On the semiconductor, I'm involved with a company recently public called Blaze, Blaize. This company is focused on creating edge AI and semiconductor and software. And we've had a lot and seen a lot about the interest of data center-based generative AI. It's ChatGPT. You've got these large data centers. But similar to the way that there was the IBM mainframe and then eventually the PC came along and decentralized and put all of the intelligence at the edge where people would interact with it. Edge AI chips, semiconductor software, is where a large portion of innovation is going to take place. So I think we'll see a shift over the next decade away from the data center focus, the huge value that's been built by companies like NVIDIA, and more companies are developing AI-driven semiconductor on the edge. Everything from autonomous vehicles to robotics to real-time security systems that can do facial and weapon recognition and act quickly. So edge technology and semiconductor is probably where I'll spend a good part of my next decade.
It's an interesting future, that's for sure. Have you ever seen the movie Hackers with Angelina Jolie? The idea that cybersecurity is handled by one person was always fun to watch at.
I enjoy watching those movies because they're actually well thought out. The potential exists for these things, but I'll be on the positive side of trying to prevent a lot of those things.
Now, with realities like Neuralink, where technology will be embedded within us, security is even more important. So, Lane, it's always fun to have chat together. I always enjoy our conversations. I'm looking for more, whether now in the Galapagos or we'll see you in Miami. but looking forward.
I look forward to my next adventure in the Galapagos with the future of space. And Daniel, I appreciate you for driving a lot of this activity because you're bringing these experiences to many more people. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.